Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Studio Ray is offering its current program about the projects funded the representativeness of European Union, and we have already offered several programs on similar issues, and today we have chosen the program, activities of European Union's office in terms of projects in Georgia, and we have picked up the subject which is hotly debated by a range of NGOs in Georgia and financed by different governmental offices. Boris, Iarochevitch, the deputy head of European Union's office in Georgia, Tamar, Pataridze, protected area agency, deputy head Nino, Tkhilava, environmental ministry and international department, head of the department, Khatuna, Sichinava, a covenant of mayors, regional office expert, and Shavgulidze, head of the management, Irakli, Shavgulidze, Necris, chairman of the office. Thank you very much for coming to the studio, and I'd like to ask Boris, first question. So, what are the projects being implemented by EU, just to inform our viewers in terms of energy issues, and why is it so hotly debated for EU?
Yes, environment is a priority for the European Union. We have between Georgia and the European Union a very broad dialogue. We discuss about trade issues, political issues, but environment remains also key, and we try to focus on a number of priorities which are important for Georgia, which are also important in the context of the international agreements that Georgia has joined, and of course the final aim is to get the legislation in Georgia closer to the EU legislation. So for the time being, I would like to say that we focus on energy efficiency, because that's very important for the EU. We have the Agenda 2020, where we have very ambitious targets in terms of energy efficiency. We have also, as another priority, protection of biodiversity and protection of environment in general, because Georgia is very rich in nature. You have the sea, you have mountains, and it's important to preserve that. And what is also important to know, that we try to work not only with ministries or agencies, but also with civil society and also with municipalities. So we try to work with all members of the Georgian society, and we also would like to focus on. I would like to say apart from energy efficiency and biodiversity, we would like to work on regional issues like water, which is very important. Water, we can deal it inside Georgia. We will have an example of a project in Batumi, but also we would like to address issues which are of interest for the whole region, concerning also Armenia and Azerbaijan.
Living in the old part of Batumi, the family of Khatuna has had the issue of water supply for 20 years. In the rainy weather, they didn't have water supply, and the family had to use their own water pump. Today, the family is enjoying 24-hour water supply. I haven't seen the water for 20 years, and I had to ask my neighbors for water. But now we have a new water supply system, and we are very happy. I'm very glad personally. We are enjoying 24-hour for water supply. Batumi has had the issue of old water pipes and sewage system, stable water supply and fecal pollution of the sea for about several years. To solve the problems, the city started to rehabilitate water and sewage systems in 2008. The city had started works with the help of Germany's Reconstruction and Development Bank and the EU. Harold Wardis, company Max deputy manager, says that the project is to solve Batumi water and sewage system issue once and for all. I think that KfW project is very important for your city if you want fast growth of economy and tourism in the region. Infrastructure must be improved very fast, and the project is to improve water and sewage systems. It is a whole complex. Batumi water staff is permanently trained by us. The implementation of the project is attached to certain challenges, of course. Germany's Reconstruction and Development Bank, within the framework of KfW project, for the first stage of work, 17 million euros have been extended as 40-year-old loan. For the second stage, 45 million euros, and for the third stage, 35 million euro have been extended. Besides, the EU has extended 4 million euros. With the help of EU, Chaki, Machinjaur and Tonikonski will enjoy 24-hour water supply. And now for the third stage, 20 million have been extended as a credit by the same bank, 15 million as a grant and 4 million as a grant by the EU. And with the financial help of the EU in Chakwi, it must be spent in Chakwi, Machinjaur and Tonikonski to install individual water supply systems. Within the framework of KfW project, treatment facilities are being installed as well. The project provisions that filtered fecal matters are discharged to be into the sea at the depth of 40 meters, and the facility is scheduled to start 2012. But meanwhile, unfiltered fecal matters are discharged into the Black Sea near the coast. The most important facility that we are going to construct with this help is Madliani treatment facility, and that allows us to discharge all cities' sewage waters to be discharged through the treatment facility to be cleaned, and clean waters will be discharged into the sea at the depth of 40 meters and at the length of 1100 meters. Within the framework of KfW project, two sewage pump stations have been rehabilitated. In Salibauer, 2 reservoirs, in Bartskhan, 1 pump station have been constructed. Virginia pump station have been also reconstructed, and in Jalo, 1 reservoir has been constructed. Within the framework of the project, Batumi sewage and water system will be completely replaced. The current works are scheduled to finish in 2017.
You just mentioned that one of the most important issues is synchronization of law, and to what extent is it's just perfect in Georgia, and if it's not, just what hampers that?
Well, it's progressing. I mean, you cannot change legislation in one day. So it's a process which goes step by step, and we are helping it. We are working a lot together. I must say there are a lot of pieces of legislation which have been passed and which are fully compliant with EU, let's say, standards, but also there are some areas of concern. For instance, a recent change in the law related to hunting, which is of concern, because on one hand we work on protected areas. We want to protect species which are in danger. On the other hand, I mean, there is a new code which is much more flexible in terms of hunting. So I would say that the process is ongoing, but it needs constant dialogue with the Georgian authorities in order to keep it in line with the EU requirements.
Before I ask Irakli a question, I'd like to know your opinion, and I mean, in general, just opinion of the Ministry of Environmental Protection. Thanks what has been said by Boris. Why was it put on schedule this law in terms of liberalization. Why was it just put on the agenda? Moreover, we do know that just intensive work was being conducted on implementation of these laws. So things which Boris has said, the point is that Georgia and EU talks are on now. It's mutual negotiations about association agreement. And a lot of things have been dedicated to the environmental protections, and there are a lot of sub-chapters in terms of water protection, biodiversity, etc., etc. So all directions have been considered, and there are just specific statutes obligatory for Georgia in terms of reflecting these requirements in the law enforcement documents, and each of them has been specified in terms of timing. It's a process of negotiation, and the work is on, and I think by the end of the years, not only environmental protection, but all negotiations will be finished and will be agreed upon on part of the project. That's why in each direction European Union is allocating some funds and approves of projects to contribute to those plans stipulated by European Union for Georgia. Specifically about hunting, well, as far as I know, this bill has not been completely passed and agreed upon, and I think the other ministry is responsible to a higher extent, but our ministry also is taking part. But what ministry? It's the Energy and Natural Resources Ministry, and they initiated this law, and but NGOs and governmental structures, including our ministry, are taking part in the negotiations, and the final law hasn't been reached yet. It's about association agreement. I mean, those obligations which should be stipulated by the law. Well, this is not the specific issue of our discussion today. I mean, this hunt activities, I mean, liberalization in inverted commas, but I'd like to know, to touch upon this issue as well, and let's generalize to what extent Georgia is ready to contribute to protection of protected areas within the framework of European cooperation. Well, Georgia is not ready for everything, of course, but this process has been on for several years. I mean, development of the sector, and a lot of good things have been done already, and the area of protected area is increasing. However, I'm not quite satisfied with that, and I think 20% of Georgia's territory should be just protected as protected areas. A lot of experts say that it's very rare that share of nature just is quite high. That's why Georgia is attractive, and the liberalization of hunting activities in terms of the code creation. So to what extent it contributes to protection of flora and fauna? I can't say it contributes. I think it's just the opposite. Well, it depends on the direction of the process. If you remember initial versions about the legislation of on hunting. Initial version said that even protected areas should have been open for hunting, and we and the international community also supported, and we just managed to remove at least national parks. However, the process is on, but where it will go, well, it's rather hard to say now, but I'd like to agree with Nino that I do hope that we will reach the outcome when our legislation will be closer to the European one, and not only just, our international legislation, the conventions which we joined just stipulates that we should provide the sustainable use of our natural resources. And I think it's no use to refer to different countries' legislations. The turning point is the sustainable use of our resources, and we have no right to use those resources which we have in non-sustainable way. I think that's a cornerstone of the issue. Tamar. So, in what way do you cooperate with the European Union? And Irakli has mentioned those measures which your agency is conducting. To what extent it's just contributing, for example, to development of sustainable tourism, for instance? Such projects are being implemented by the agency and by partner organizations. And I'm sure that Irakli will talk more about the project, specific project. But I'd like to just talk about the specific project in terms of cooperation with you. I will introduce that, as Nino said, the projects funded by European Union means that a country should be supported in terms of fulfill international obligations, but besides we get specific results in terms of implementation of the projects. For an NACRES project, it's about carnivore conservation project. The project has a longer name. It says improvement of opportunities of protected areas and involvement of local population in conservation of local flora and fauna. The project has several target groups and administration of protected areas and local population, which is quite important for the project itself and for the agency of protected areas. In this case, we are talking about two protected areas, Vashlovani and Tusheti. And as I noted, local population. The project is quite successful, not only in terms of outcomes, but in terms of format as well. It's a multi-sided project. There is just conservation project and opportunity of development and work with local communities involved. The principle just stipulates the involvement of the local community. I can offer specific examples. In terms of Tusheti protected area, it's quite popular place, as you know, in terms of tourist visiting, and it's increasing, and there is demand for guest houses, so local people are setting up local guest houses, and the owners have been technically assisted in terms of management of visiting tourists and visitors, and about 10 owners have been assisted technically, and to set up the protected area means some limitation of accessibility to natural resources, and projects implemented in Georgia tried to offer some alternative sources of living for the local population just to compensate. And Tkhilava is a good example. And talking about the heat houses, the population has been not only helped, but it has been helped in terms of increasing of efficiency, marketability, and etc., etc. And in Vashlovani, the work was very just intensified in terms of work with the farmers, with ship owners, but Vashlovani is also important in terms of conservation activities within the framework of the project. We just have seen the setting up of photographic traps. It's important in terms of patrolling and also research and monitoring. I mean, just to watch biodiversity. I mean, photographic traps is very important.
Species Conservation, Scientific and Research Center, Nakhrisi, and International Organization Flora and Fauna are implementing Georgia's Predators Conservation Project. The project is being implemented with the financial help of the EU. The program is being implemented in Vashlovani and Tkhilava protected areas and provisions using international experience, local landscape protection, and large predator conservation efficient methodology development. The project started in 2010 and covers such components as Vashlovani protected areas, community and media relationship strategy, identification, improvement of law enforcement in Vashlovani and Tkhilava protected areas, telemetric research, and man and predator conflict research. Based on the last research, it was identified that in Vashlovani and Tkhilava protected areas, the main reason for cattle loss is infectious diseases and attacks of wolves. Based on the results of the research, strategies have been identified that provision, formulation of field education, and veterinary service improvement. Besides, has been created a wolf attack response group. On the screen, the members of the group are trying to put radio transmitter collar on the wolf. It allows to veterinarily monitor wolves and to treat them as required. Within the framework of the project, in protected areas, Nakhrisi also installed photographic traps. Nakhrisi Georgia's Predator Conservation Project is scheduled to be finished in 2012. So, what has been the effect of the project? I think we are to see the eventual effects, eventual efficiency, but we now can see, as Tamar said, inclusiveness of the population, of the society, and the increasing of inclusiveness is very important. All projects need support of population. And now we have accumulated enough experience. Just this way doesn't work in Georgia, and the communication with the population is a crucial point. So we have protected area where just a lot of wild animals live, and they just constantly affect the local population. This is direct connection situation when, for example, wolf leaves the protected area and steals sheep from a farmer. This is a direct conflict, and the turning point of the project was to study the conflict from different sides, meaning just social research, social assessment, and at the same time, just humanly, how just the way human looks at these things. And we are starting this process from the point of bear, from the point of wolf. We have just seen in the footage we just set up special collars, and we'll just send us signals about the moving around, about the movement. But it's important to know, for example, when they just approach the lodging of people, and etc., etc. So that was the turning point of the project to solve this conflict. Such survey hasn't been conducted before, just ever, in terms of the region. And it's quite clear that when you study something, you get some results. I mean, specific steps, what can be done to decrease the intensity of the conflict. Of course, it's hard to eradicate the conflict, but I think it's possible to decrease the effect of the conflict. It's a very, very curious point, and I think we can even dedicate a special program for these issues. And I'm sure that your organizations will cooperate with our studio just to inform our viewers in detail about these kinds of conservation of biodiversity. You just mentioned the conflict. Well, it may not be quite illusionary. I mean, in Georgia, we just witnessed the regrouping of the functioning. For example, natural resources are managed by one ministry and environment by different ministry. And sometimes it can generate the conflict between the establishments. And do you see these risks? And can we expect more risks? And the same question I have for Boris. How can you regulate? How can it be regulated? Just in the space of European Union? Well, I can't call it a conflict because realistically, what happened? Resource planning simply has been divided between the ministries. But talking about the just approaching European Union or harmonization, this obligation wouldn't belong to some specific ministry. Our whole country is responsible for this kind of obligations. I mean, things which we take as our responsibilities. This is the responsibility of the government. And agreed upon action, and the conflict between the ministries, I think we can't expect any conflict because we all should obey these rules which we signed. But in terms of the idea, the environment protection in the world is a kind of controversial in terms of development. I don't know how should we call it, but Ministry of Environmental Protection in all countries of the world, and Georgia included, always, of course, never just object to development, but during development, always try to save the environment. I mean, in terms of when we pick up friendly technological means for environment. This is an example of the whole world, and we are not just exception.
I would like to say there is no European model in terms of structures. The ministry, we have 20 member states, very soon 28, and there are different settings. What is important is a coordination among ministries. And I think last week I launched a project in the field of tourism. and in the future we will also massively support agriculture in Georgia. So it's very important that there is a coordination at the level of the Georgian government, at the level of the EU, that we integrate all these programs in the field of environment, of tourism, in the field of agriculture, because they are linked. We all want development of Georgia, job creation. On the other hand, we want all to keep the diversity, the environment. So we have to integrate all these different aspects, and it's normal that there are diverging interests sometimes, and that's why also for us it's very important to have a dialogue, not only between ministries, but with the civil society, with international organizations, because we have to take into account everybody's views, and we have been, as the EU, insisting that in all our processes, dialogues, that all the stakeholders are involved, and we insist a lot of having a dialogue with the civil society, with NGOs. And I'm very happy today that we have a representative of the FGO, we have ministries, agencies, we have municipalities. That's the right way, I mean, to progress, and at the end you will have, or we will have to reach a compromise, because you cannot satisfy everybody, but you have to find a compromise which satisfies the majority. And that's why, I mean, coordination and dialogue are key words in environment, like in other fields which are important if a country wants to get closer to the European Union.
I think it's very nice and pleasant wish. Khatuna, to what extent is informed the society? I'm talking about the energy efficiency projects being implemented and governmental agencies together with the European Union. Talking about the inclusiveness of population, well, there have been many projects implemented in this direction. For example, Energy Efficiency Center is now implementing this program. I mean, Energy Bus, which covers the whole Georgia, and informing the local population about the advantages of energy efficiency. I mean, how to heat the houses, and what should be implemented to save energy resources. And I was myself a part of the project, and I believe that NGOs have been involved in this area, do a lot of things. They just conduct energy audits, they conduct a range of training sessions and demonstration projects, well, small ones, but still. And a lot of brochures have been published, a lot of TV programs have been dedicated, and we can hear something on the radio on the subject for the population. Energy Efficiency Center was set up in 1999 with the support of the EU, and since then the center has implemented a range of projects with the financial aid of the EU. Now the center is implementing 2 of such projects. The projects are to be scheduled to finish by 2013. One of the projects, Energy Saving Initiative, provisions skilled advice in energy policy, technical assessment, capacity building, and demonstration project support. One more project named Model is in European Union, energy saving consumption decrease and technical assessment to the local self-government bodies. We are working together with them about optimization of energy consumption in Tbilisi for municipal buildings and buildings budgeted by the Tbilisi municipality, how to decrease for them energy consumption level, and we are implementing a range of efforts. Energy Efficiency Center organizes energy efficiency days in Georgia, and they advise population to save power. In winter, when we
heats a building, when we consume power, or in winter or in summer when we cool the building. It's very important to avoid such gaps in most vulnerable places as windows, doors and attics, through which hot or cold water flows out of the building. Technically, it's easiest to implement. For example, when the heating system is on, we should close the open window, or to turn off home appliances in the rooms where we are not. And the easiest is to turn off the light. Of course, it's very easy to turn off standby mode when green light is on TV set or some other home appliances, though the screen is not on, but it still consumes a certain amount of power. It's important to select home appliances in terms of energy characteristics. As a rule, it is reflected in energy or power label with Latin letter A and pluses, and the more it goes downward from the A, it means that the particular appliance consumes more power. To heat one and the same area in different buildings, different amounts of power is needed. Each building is individual, and each building has its own energy characteristics. To evaluate that, energy passport is used, and as a rule, in European countries, each time a property is sold or purchased or even rented, an owner is responsible to present energy passport to a leaseholder. Some time ago, the European Union financed one more project for the Energy Efficiency Center. The project provisions Mayor Covenant City assistance to fulfill their obligations.
This topic remains urgent in Covenant of Mayors, in terms of Covenant of Mayors. Could we just talk in more detail about the Covenant of Mayors? Covenant of Mayors was founded by the European Union. I mean, it's for local government and regional governments to be allowed to fight against the climatic changes, and the European Union has a responsibility, against climatic changes, to decrease 20% loss of energy and 20% increase sustainable energy resource shares in terms of energy generation, and 20% decrease in CEO, and more than 3,000 cities have been just united. And Covenant of Mayors, this is a new project funded by EU. This is the Covenant of Mayors in eastern part, and 16 countries included, 5 Central Asian countries, Georgia, Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Ukraine, Belarus, and Moldova. And these requirements, program document requirements, things which you have just listed, this big number of cities, municipalities, who is trying realistically to implement these things? I think it mostly just concerns European cities. Ex-USSR cities share is quite low. In the list of the cities, about 80 cities, if I'm not mistaken. For example, 4 Georgian cities have been innovated: Tbilisi, Batumi, Rostov, Kutaisi. And I think this is the subject to be proud of, that Georgia sort of followed the Covenant of Mayors and took on certain responsibilities to participate in the battle against climatic changes. And of course, the cities should implement these requirements. For example, one of the basic points of the project is that cities
that will join the Covenant of Mayors. They should take on responsibilities and they will draw up this critical plan for sustainability, but this plan should not be just put away. The things should be implemented, should be carried out, and so far Tbilisi has drawn up the plan. But does the ministry knows about this plan? Of course, the ministry is aware of that, and we have just a special group in terms of climatic changes, which is cooperating with Tbilisi municipality. And the general picture is that Georgia represents the side of Covenant of Climatic Changes. It's transitory economy country, Georgia, and just Georgia has no specific obligations for CO, and level is much lower in Georgia, just compared to the countries which have just higher CO level. And we are just considered just low emission country, but in cities, I mean, I'm talking about the country in general, but our country, which has no high emission, is important. Well, it's even just at least the city should restrict the emission levels, and Tbilisi municipality initiative was quite acceptable, and they cooperated with our ministry. We calculated these things, and on this basis we have calculated the document. And this, of course, we know about this plan. Okay, plan is a plan, but can we see any trend in cities of Georgia? I mean, trend to decrease the CO emissions? Well, I think it's a subject of the monitoring, but who is going to conduct this monitoring? Our office will assist. I'm in a regional office set up in Tbilisi. It's a Covenant of Mayors office which provides Georgia, Azerbaijan and Armenia. Of course, we will assist in monitoring, and the cities that will join the covenant, we will help to draw up sustainable plans and to carry out these plans. Our office, of course, will help in terms of selecting methodology. As for Tbilisi, some things are being done in Tbilisi because our priority was, our pollution priority was public transport, meaning that some roads have been rehabilitated, we have new green traffic lights. If, for example, a car develops one at the same speed, it can drive through Pekini Avenue just through green light. So this is, of course, not a lot, but still means something, even for a driver. It just means a lower cost for petrol, and in terms of law protection, we will have just less amount of emission. Tbilisi municipalities, but do the things meet the public transport meets the standards? In Tbilisi or even in Batumi, as you say, Batumi has also joined the covenant. Yes, Batumi has joined the covenant, but Batumi and Kutaisi just joined the covenant in summer, and they haven't prepared the plan. They have 1 year for this. But Tbilisi has started implementing certain measures. Yes, this is serious calculations. Well, it's not just today or just tomorrow. Our plans, our cities just are planning this way, and when we talked about the initiative of European Union, it means the limitation until 2020.
ეს რო ქალაქი ამას ჩართო ძალიან მნიშვნელოვანია.
In 2010, Tbilisi Mayor Khatuna signed the Mayor Covenant and took responsibility to decrease CO2 at least by 20%. The document was created under the auspices of the EU and was joined by more than 1,000 cities. We say that development of heavy industry, which is the major source of CO emissions, is not our priority, and we place an emphasis on other sectors of the economy. It's rather hard for us when we ourselves are going through the development stage and we have to create as many enterprises and jobs as possible. But on the other hand, we declare that we do understand this obligation, and we will think about how to decrease the CO emissions in Tbilisi as much as possible. Tbilisi municipality declares that it is successfully meeting its obligations. We had to identify CO emission level and work out a game plan for 1 year. And among Eastern Partnership countries, we were the only city that did so. I think, if I'm not mistaken, only one Ukrainian city did that. To decrease CO2, Tbilisi municipality is working in different directions. Municipality declares that new yellow minibuses and regular buses pollute the environment to a lesser extent. New dump sites have been created and road traffic has been regulated. With the help of EU, Tbilisi municipality will assist Batumi and Kutaisi to develop a work plan. Within framework of the project, all Eastern big partnership cities and Central Asian city representatives will be brought to Tbilisi, and we will inform them about this message and explain why it is possible to join the Mayor's Covenant and that there is no danger in terms of development of their countries if they start to use our methods. It is also important for us, and Tbilisi municipality plans to implement other projects with the support of the EU. We try to explain what means a green building. That is a building that consumes much less power and well heated, and etc., etc., etc. We think that the EU should be one of the first to participate in implementation of such projects. So how positively does the European Union assess these initiatives, this agreement, and involvement of Georgian cities in this agreement? How does the European Union consider that issue?
But for us, it's very important. In all our agreements, we mention the association agreement, which is a partnership between Georgia and the EU. There is also a free trade area that we are building. We are talking about also environment issues. It's very important that civil society is involved in that, and because you cannot just have one side of the story, be it a ministry or government or enterprises, because the interests are diverging. So we have created a number of platforms where civil society can express itself. Civil society from different countries meet also regularly because we think that it's absolutely essential in a democracy, and in Georgia it's a democracy, that civil society is heard and can express its view. And we have talked a lot about environment. The problem with environment that the results, the impact will be felt in the long term. So it's very difficult to really mobilize people, except for direct issues like water supply or improvement in the traffic. But overall, it's something which takes time. So it's very important that civil society is involved, so that information can be spread and all the citizens can be informed. Not to speak about the role civil society can play in warning people about certain issues in the field of protected areas or other areas. So for us, that's really key, fundamental to involve civil society, NGOs, and other institutions. We work also a lot with municipalities, because that's also a level of decision which is very important. So again, I mean, the dialogue is key. in order to have a sufficient information about the decisions which are taken, about the laws which are passed, and also it's key to have an impact in the long term, because that's the way we can reach all the citizens and they can contribute to the issue as well.
Finally, Tamar, I'd like to know personally, and I think our viewers would get more information about twinning project and when is it going to be scheduled to start and what this project could bring. This is very interesting initiative. This is the idea about twinning program. I mean, just work with public institutions, I mean, country members of European Union, and beneficiaries Georgia in this case. I know a lot of twinning projects are being implemented in Georgia in environmental issues. As for the protected area agencies, the project which we are going to implement, when we have to go through some stages within the country, well, this project, I mean, the main idea is conservation of biodiversity, and to reach this aim, just to increase the efficiency of management of this protected areas. This is the main reason to protect and to conserve biodiversity. And I can talk more openly about the project because the European Union itself just declared a call, and the project just in terms of our management agency just means the management plan drawing up. I'll briefly explain. This is a textbook document for the administration, which allows for the administration to plan both just the midterm and long-term goals. And the management plan should be followed with the operational plan, I mean activity plan, which allows in time and in space to just write specific activities to reach specifically set goals. And twinning program will help us to implement 4 such management plans. But what protected areas do you mean? This is Imereti, just cave protected areas, Tkhilava National Park, Lagodehi, and Ajameti. For example, Lagodehi had before the management plan, but it's going to be expired and it should be renewed. And a lot of things have been changed, as Irakli said, in our ecosystem, and we have to respond to, I mean, the plan should respond to new challenges. Important thing about twinning is that it's just not just one-time injection. I mean, nobody has just for once come from European Union. They live just one-time project. I mean, the Georgians are actively involved in the process, both from central government of protected areas, and I have just listed the things. So only jointly the work will be conducted on documents, meaning that we will just accumulate some experience to prepare these future documents. To what extent your organization will be involved and of course NGOs as well. I can't say anything specific about the project because as far as I know it's between the agency and the EU. The negotiation is on, but to a certain extent Georgia has a certain experience and capital of knowledge, but this should be increased, and I wish this capital were just increased inside, I mean within the framework of the agency, both in central bodies and on the spot. I mean, on the spot increasing is very important because these are the administration people who realistically implement their obligations. And I'm, as a representative of the society, I always support the idea to just invest on the spot locally and to increase locally as well. Of course, all this is happening just in agreement with the agency, but our view means, well, I mean, more locally, just to get the results more locally. Thank you very much. Today we have talked about many things. We have talked as much as we could, I mean, in general terms, because our goal was to inform our viewers on the projects being implemented by the EU in terms of environmental protection in Tkhilava. Thank you very much. Tamar, Pataridze, Khatuna, Sichinava, Irakli, Shavgulidze, and Boris Iarochevitch, who is the deputy head of European Union office in Georgia, plenipotentiary, and the projects which we talked about are supported, funded, and stimulated by European Union. These are the projects which you should be fully informed on, and on the other hand, you can. I think you should get involved as much as you can. At least that's what our studio wishes when we planned our program together with European Union. I mean, just maximal involvement of our society. Thank you very much, and we will be expecting your response, your feedback, and you can see our program on the website of Studio Red, www.studiored.org, and you can leave there your suggestions and questions. Thank you very much. See you later.